Hello, my name is Veronica. Kayona, what is your name?
My name is George Nugent.
Tell me about yourself.
Let's see, I was born in 1953. I grew up during the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Saw the moon landing on TV. Went into the service I enlisted when I was 17, and I joined the Navy. And from there, after I got out of the Navy, I went to Penn State for solar engineering, and then just went to work.
Describe what it was like going through boot camp.
Well, every morning we'd get up for reveille. We would go off to the mess hall, or we would be standing watch. From there, we would go to the drill hall, where we would do exercises, or we would be given certain details. I was in the staff company, and where we basically stood in front of all the rest and yelled out the orders in the drill hall, and it all worked towards commencement. Or what was it called? It was called, I don't know. But it was leading graduation. There we go. It was leading to that one point. Now, every day we would be given different instructions where we were training on how to do different things as far as putting out fires, what would happen during different drills. It was just getting us ready to go to the fleet. We went through the gas chamber, which was a whole different experience, but it wasn't that bad. We also did a lot of inoculations. They'd line us up, and they'd have a corpsman on each side of you giving you a shot, and you just walked down the line and got shots. Then we would always, when we walked to certain areas, we would always have to sing. When we went through the tunnel, when we were in basic, we always had to sing Anchors Away. And when we weren't, we were standing watch or in the barracks when we had some free time. It was interesting in the barracks because you never knew what to expect, especially at night. You'd see people talking in their sleep or standing at attention on their bunks when they were asleep because of drilling, and at that time you put a lot of hours in, but it was all good natured fun, and could make fun of others. Maybe that isn't a good thing now, but it was kept things light. And then the closer we got to graduation, what you found was the people you would constantly have a rotation of people through the barracks, and I had to go through 3 or 4 different graduation ceremonies for the people who were graduating before me, and then when I graduated from boot camp, that was my last one to do. But in the meantime, I played practical jokes, to make things light. One time I went in the barracks, and when they saw me with my ainglet and everything and dressed up, I went to the ones who had just arrived in the barracks, and basically pretended I was the petty officer in charge, and I had people yelling I would ask them, what are your orders, and watch their reactions until they figured out what I was doing and they chased me out of the barracks. It was a lot of drilling, like I said. But like I said, I was in staff company, so it wasn't a matter of doing as much exercise as yelling commands and how well you yelled them and how loud you yelled them. And I did my service duty, which was many people had to go to the mess hall and peel potatoes and stuff like that. Well, I didn't have to do that. I had to deliver mail, so it was a pretty easy experience.
Describe what it was like in the military.
Well, basic training. We were all set up in a barracks. It was around Christmas time. It was cold. We had to stand a lot of watches. After basic training, I moved to New London, Connecticut, where I went through sub school. From sub school, I went to Orlando, Florida for A school. And then I went to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii for deployment. I spent 3 years in Hawaii on the USS Tautog, which was a fast attack submarine. And then I went to San Diego for the rest of my time, where I was on the USS Salmon, which was a diesel boat. It was a different time and different place. Remember, back then it was still, the Cold War was still going on, and everybody was always on alert for something or one thing or another.
Explain what it was like leaving the military.
Well, leaving the military was a little bit different. I mean, here you were used to being, everything was regimented. You followed orders. You had set schedules. You knew what time you were going to get up. And you knew you would have a long day. But changing and getting out, it was a completely different experience. You were used to certain, how do I want to put it? It was, at that time, you knew what your job was. Getting out, you had to figure out where you were going next. I knew I was going to school, but it was still different. You expected people who were, if you told somebody something in the military, even though I was only a petty officer, if I told somebody to do something who was under my rank, you expected them to do the job. Getting out, people didn't have that attitude. It was, oh well, I'll think about it. So the regiment was different, but you adapt. It takes a little bit, but you adapt, and then you have your dreams, and you think you're still in for a while, but that fades over a period of time too.
Explain your strengths and weaknesses you had to overcome.
Well, my strengths were I was able to figure things out. many times I'd think about something, there was a problem, and I would resolve it. I was able to just analyze something and come up with a solution. That's probably one of my better strengths. And years ago, I was able to do things. I was better organized. As I get older, it's becoming harder and harder, especially with technology. Today's technology, I mean, I saw it in my parents, and now I'm experiencing the same thing. Technology moves faster than I can, so that's my weakness.
Describe a situation where you had to take charge. Was it difficult?
Well, nowadays, was production supervisor. I started out in the lab, and then they wanted me to become a supervisor. Supervising people is not always easy because you have so many different personalities. Some people, when you first start out, will try to take advantage of the situation. Now, me being on the shorter side, it can have its moments. People who are taller sometimes tend to try to push the limits as far as, trying to impose their size over you. But that's part of the job that you take on, the responsibilities. You have a specific task in mind, and you tell them that's what they're supposed to do, and you expect the work to be done. You never worry. I mean, you make sure that everything is safe. If there are concerns, you address them. But if it's just doing a job, then you make sure they understand. I also work as a supervisor. I worked with unions, and there were certain rules that are expected, both on the union side and on the company side. And you make sure that you're on task, and you have to work with the people. I had one run-in with a person who was working in the lab. He was a lot bigger than I was, and he tried to take advantage of that. I had to basically come up and say, I expect you to do this. If you don't do this, then there are consequences. And you can't just ignore any certain situations. You have to address them. Sometimes they're difficult, sometimes they're easy, but it's mostly a personal type situation that you have to work around.
Explain where you are at now.
Well, I've just retired, and where I am with that is sort of like when I got out of the military. I'm in that same situation. I'm having to adjust. I'm not sure how well or how long it'll take, but I'm working towards that point. I've worked most of my life. When I was young, it was a paper route or it was mowing lawns. In the military, you were always busy. While I was in college, I worked while I was going to school, And then once I worked, and I put in many hours, and I'm not sure that that's, working all those hours, you get sort of used to that too. So taking a step back, it takes adjusting.
For the empowerment perspective, it was kind of difficult coming up with the questions and understanding how to interview the person. So I did some outside research as well. So I decided to take a real life situation and figure out how to dig it in and see what I can come up and have some difficult questions to make the person think. So that's what I did in the interview. I interviewed my stepdad, which he is a man that's quiet, men a few words, but has tons of stories to tell. So I decided to look into his past and see what I can come up with.